Welcome to part 3 of What If Hinata is the sensei of Team 7. As always, linked to the fanfiction is the description. Chapter 5, A Shinobi's Resolve. Naruto was in a hurry. He didn't want to be late, so his team was expecting him. Damn it, of all the days it had to be today that I overslept. He jumped from tree to tree to get there in a hurry, but then he noticed something was off. He stopped. He decided to listen in on a conversation because these people looked out of place, make sure not to be seen. He stayed in the bushes and listened to the conversation. Our boss wants to take Tezuna's daughter and grandson hostage. A man who looked like he was in his late 20s was saying, there's nothing particularly special about him in terms of his appearance. That daughter of his, though. I wonder if we could have our way with her. It's not often that we get to have. The older man hit him. He said something stupid. Our goal is to make sure they're unharmed. If possible, keep your dick in your pants. You idiot. The very idea disgusted Naruto. He hated rapists with a passion. He wanted to bust some skulls, but he wouldn't do his team any favors if he rushed in without a plan. I could use some suggestions, QB. Figure this one out on your own. It should be obvious. Look at the environment around you, he suggested. Naruto looked around. What's the best way to take these men out without being detected and without drawing attention? He looked at his surroundings. They were just regular thugs. He could take them without breaking a sweat, but his goal was to separate them and interrogate one of them. The younger one was definitely more likely to talk than the older one, who seemed more disciplined. He would have to separate the two if he was going to do this without being seen. Remembering his training from his sensei Naruto, picked up a rock that he found on the ground and threw it. The men looked as if wondering where it came from. What the hell was that? Said the younger man. The older one looked irritated with his younger companion. You idiot, it's just a damn rock. Naruto stealthily moved to the other tree across from them and tossed another rock, causing the younger man to panic. Where the hell are you? I'm not afraid of you. Of course, his older companion was feeling the effects as well. It was the opening that Naruto needed. He went behind the older man and knocked him out. He hit him on his neck and he fell to the ground. The younger man looked at Naruto like he had seen a ghost. What the hell are you? He said, trembling. I'm nobody special, I just have some questions. Naruto slammed the man against the tree. He looked terrified. Naruto took a kunai from his pouch and put it against his throat. What is your plan? What does your boss want with Tezuna's family? Tell me or I will spill out your guts. Naruto knew fear was a weapon, something that his sensei told him on one of their first lessons. This man was craven. He could tell from his experience of dealing with cowards when he was a child. He wants to use them as hostages, that is all I know, please don't kill me. Naruto put the weapon away from his neck and punched him in the stomach, knocking him to the ground. He tied him up to make sure he wouldn't do anything. Tezuna family is in danger, there's no time to waste. Naruto headed to Tezuna's house, where Tsunami and Inari were waiting. As much as he wanted to help his team, he couldn't leave Tsunami and Inari to their fate. He had to save them or else the mission would be compromised. I'm sorry, sensei. I'll be a little late. Naruto headed as fast as his legs could carry him, was determined to get to Tezuna family and time. He wasn't going to fail, he couldn't fail. He wasn't going to leave them to their fate, just like Hinata, his sensei, couldn't leave the people in the land of waves to their fate. Hinata, along with Sakura and Sasuke, and their client, walked to the bridge. It wasn't complete yet, but it would be soon. All this over a bridge built to help with commerce is something she couldn't understand. He would benefit from the bridge too, but perhaps that's what he wanted, power over the people. It was too quiet, she didn't see any workers in sight. Tezuna noticed this as well. Something was off, she found workers who were dead. It was brutal how they were killed, completely unnecessary. Hinata thought, then she saw Zabuza and Haku. Naruto wasn't here, he was late. Her students, Sakura and Sasuke, were by her side. Out of all the times the idiot has to be late, it has to be today, Sakura said, annoyed. Hinata would worry about that later, she had faith Naruto would come. One of your brats isn't here, Zabuza remarked. She said nothing. The two shinobi couldn't be taken on at the same time, not without having to worry about protecting Tezuna. Sasuke, take on the masked one, make sure not to underestimate him. Hinata advised. Haku made his move, Sasuke blocked his needles with his kunai. He tried to cut his right arm. Haku did hand signs, then shot water needles at Sasuke. Thousands of needle deaths. She saw what looked like thousands of water needles headed straight at Sasuke. Sasuke countered quickly with a fireball jutsu. Things happened so quickly that it was difficult to keep track, at least for now. Haku and Zabuza were separated. The Uchiha brat is no match for Haku. His inexperience will be his downfall. If he had a few more years, possibly he would have a chance. He's unlucky to have faced him so soon in his career. Hinata did not take the bait. She got into her stance. I have full faith in my student, Hinata said with her Byakugan activated. Do you think I'm going to fall for the same trick twice? I underestimated you before, but I know the weakness of the Byakugan. Haku studied it. It's not the all-seeing eye that you arrogant Hyugas say it is. She wondered what he was getting at. The Byakugan is impressive, I'll give credit where credit is due, but it's not without weaknesses. He did a stance, putting his right hand near his nose and his left in the air, and doing a hand sign, missed jutsu. Hinata couldn't believe he was using this trick. She could see right through it with her Byakugan. If you think I'm just using the same trick again, think again why I'm using the mist. Of course, your Byakugan can see right through it, but we both know it takes up a lot of chakra. If you were to use it carelessly, you'd drain your strength quickly. You'll have to choose whether to conserve your strength dragging the fight long enough for your student to be overwhelmed by Haku. You may be strong, but you cannot take on both of us. Even if you do defeat me, you cannot defeat Haku. Zabuza isn't stupid. He understands the drawbacks of using the Byakugan in prolonged combat, which is the main reason why members of the Hyuga clan don't use it unless they know they can end a fight quickly. It's a powerful tool in a fighter's arsenal, but it also has its drawbacks, and Zabuza managed to pick up on this. He is a dangerous opponent. He learned from his mistakes. She may be stronger than him, she's confident she could defeat him, but he has one advantage over her. Despite how powerful her Byakugan could be, it drains chakra, and if she uses too much it can drain her chakra quickly. She couldn't put herself in a position where she won't be able to help her team. No, she has to play this smart. Zabuza was behind her, about to cut her in half. But Hinata ducked and hit him straight in the chest. However, it turned out to be just a water clone. Behind her was another water clone. So he was trying to wear her out by using sheer numbers of clones. So you're just going to throw clones at me, doesn't that take up chakra, Zabuza? Hinata said, trying to rile him up. I'm right behind you. Hinata turned around and felt a kunai going through her abdomen. She jumped away. She was trying to keep her distance, but before she could come up with a counterattack, she felt a cut on her right side and then her left, and finally, another cut at her stomach. She almost collapsed to her knees during this fight that wasn't going on for very long, and he had already injured her in multiple ways. Blood dripped to the ground. She was breathing heavily. She looked at her hands, which were completely covered in blood on both the right and left sides of her upper body. Looks like you underestimated me, girl. Did your teachers teach you about deception? He asked mockingly. She felt like a fool with her injury now. Her strength had been reduced. Then again, Zabuza was behind her before she could defend herself. She was hit again, this time in the right thigh. She screamed in pain, almost collapsing to the ground but stopped herself. Zabuza was behind her before she could defend herself. He attacked again, this time in the right thigh. She screamed in pain, almost collapsed on the ground but stopped herself. He's way too strong, she has to go all out, even if she is stronger than him. He could still win through a war of attrition. The mist is impossible to see through without using her Byakugan. But if she uses her Byakugan too much it could tire her out and he could win by outlasting her. She has to win the fight quickly. She cannot waste any time. Her right side was covered in blood. Blood loss would be an inevitable outcome the longer the fight drags on. She couldn't let this fight drag on. It'll be a lot easier for her to go all out if she didn't have 3 students to worry about. There was more at stake than her life, but the lives of her students and the people of the Land of Waves were on the line. She had to win or all of their lives would be forfeit. At the same time as Naruto. Naruto finally reached his destination, and as the person he had integrated with said they were targeting Tezuna's family. The boy Inari, despite being afraid, was willing to charge at the 2 men in order to protect his mother. The mother was looking on in horror. Naruto knew what to do. The silver-haired man was about to cut him in half only to find out not too long afterwards that he was alive and unhurt. "You're brave for standing up to these bullies and protecting your mom," Naruto said to the boy who put his hand behind his head and smiled gratefully. "I'll take care of these people, I don't have to break a sweat with these thugs." The older among them looked enraged and charged at Naruto. Naruto just punched him in the stomach and he clenched his stomach in pain. The other one looked scared, but Naruto wasn't going to allow him to get away. After all, he was planning on killing Inari and possibly raping the boy's mother. He would kill him, but Naruto was not a killer, so he just punched him in the stomach and he fell to the ground, passed out. The encounter ended as soon as it began. It was too easy, but Naruto wasn't looking to show off. "You were kind of cool, Naruto," the boy said to him. Naruto turned away in embarrassment. The boy was crying. He was trying to look strong in front of Naruto, but Naruto put his hand on his head. "There's nothing wrong with crying if you're happy," the boy nodded in agreement. "I have to go. My friends need me." Naruto looked at Inari one last time and said one thing before he headed off. "The only way things are going to change is if people like you lead the people to rise up. Do not give up. You have things worth protecting, your mother and your grandfather. I'm going to make sure the bad guys don't harm you anymore." He didn't look back as he jumped from tree to tree, rapidly running to his destination. Haku came earlier. Was he fighting with his sensei or his team? He had to get there in time. He couldn't let any of his friends die, he had to protect them. With Sasuke. Sasuke had never encountered someone with this much skill before. Haku was in a different league than anyone he had ever faced in Konoha. He was using his kunai, which was clashing against his opponent's needles. Neither one of them was making a move. They both knew if they made one wrong move, one of them would die in an instant. Sasuke had not been in a life or death battle in his life. He wasn't scared because, compared to Itachi, Haku was nothing. That didn't change the fact that if he couldn't survive this fight, he couldn't even dream of ever fighting his brother. "I admit you're pretty skilled. It's a shame you had to face me so soon in your career." What bothered Sasuke was how polite his opponent was. Just what the hell was he thinking? He was thinking of multiple different ways he could end the fight so he could come to his senses. That's a part that he was fighting was way too skilled to end in a fast battle. He had to come up with another way. His opponent tried to use the water release technique again, but Sasuke was able to easily counter it this time. He kicked his opponent in the gut, knocking him back. Any other opponent would have been down for the count, but Haku wasn't that kind of opponent. He quickly regained his footing. "You fight well," Haku said, not bothering to listen. His opponent came out again, and Sasuke countered every technique that he threw at him. He knew his opponent was holding back, there was no way he could be struggling against someone of his level. What was Haku thinking? "I never thought I'd use this technique on someone like you, but I have to finish this fight quickly." He saw him do hand signs, and when the last of the seals were done, ice mirrors appeared around Sasuke. He looked like he was surrounded by them. He could see his own reflection. There's no way a technique like this could be copied by the Sharingan. It had to be a Kekkei Genkei. No one could create ice mirrors like this, it just wasn't possible otherwise. "My Kekkei Genkei ability gives me advantage and extreme speed. You cannot touch me. I'll make this as painless as possible." Sasuke tried to look to see where he was coming from, but his eyes going to keep up. He was hit on his right arm and then on his left and then on his back and then his chest and everywhere else. He couldn't keep track. He was too fast. It was like dealing with someone who was moving faster than the speed of light. He was barely able to stand up. There's only one way he would be able to survive this encounter. His regular eyes couldn't keep track. He had not had a chance to test his Sharingan in battle yet. There would be no other choice if he was going to get out of this battle alive. Before he could do anything, he heard Naruto shout, "I have arrived." Naruto shouted, announcing himself. Sasuke couldn't help but twitch in annoyance at all the times he had to announce his entrance. It had to be at a time like this. But with Naruto here, there's a possibility to actually find a way out of this situation. If he can stay outside the mirror, it would be possible. There were multiple plans Sasuke thought about in his mind. Naruto from the outside and Sasuke from the inside could have a reasonable chance of defeating Haku. Naruto's techniques could be useful in this scenario, and the Outside, the Shadow Clone Wind Explosion Jutsu could do a decent amount of damage to the ice mirrors, along with the wind bullet. A plan quickly formed in his mind. Yes, he would definitely go with that plan. But unfortunately, almost as if the universe hated Sasuke, Naruto appeared right by his side, and he wanted to smack him. "You idiot, why did you come in here? You basically gave up the one advantage we had." He was so angry he would punch Naruto if the situation wasn't life or death. "I came here to help. I didn't mean." Sasuke cut him off harshly. "Let's focus on the damn battle." The plan Sasuke had in mind cannot work now, but perhaps he could find a way to work around the situation if only Naruto hadn't rushed in and gotten himself into this situation. Sasuke decided to ask Naruto a question because he looked like he had a plan. "Got any plans?" asked Sasuke. "I got one, I don't know if you're going to like it." Sasuke never liked his plans. "Just out with it, loser," Sasuke said, irritated. "I distract Haku with my shadow clones and you do it with your fireball jutsu. Eventually, you'll be able to hit him. Then, when he leaves himself open, we can finally take him down." Sasuke didn't really feel confident in that plan, but considering the circumstances they were in, it was the best they got. "You better not slow me down," Sasuke warned. "I wouldn't dream of it, bastard." Naruto did the hand seals and created hundreds of shadow clones. He thought this plan was madness, but considering how desperate the situation had become, it was better than not having a plan at all. If this plan worked, he would never call Naruto an idiot again. At the same time with Hinata. Hinata wanted to slap Naruto at that moment. Out of all the things he had to do was without thinking impulsively and without a plan coming to Sasuke's aid. What he did was make things worse. No, she would not deal with that later. Right now she had to focus on the enemy in front of her. If it weren't for all the discipline and training she would pass out from the blood loss. Interesting, one thing I've observed about the Byakugan is its blind spot is at the back of the neck, so in order to compensate you use a technique to cover your blind spots. Clever, but it won't aid you in this situation. You are injured, which will slow you down when you try to use your rotation technique. The Byakugan consumes chakra and using it in a prolonged battle like this wears down the user, but now that you're in your injured state it should be child's play. I know every weakness of the fabled Byakugan. She wanted to scoff at his ignorance. He knows some things about her clan's Kekkei Genkei but not everything, and she was going to prove it. She didn't want to use this technique, but considering the situation she had no choice. It was a jutsu that dulled pain and was used by the Hyuga clan when they were ever on missions for extended periods of time and got injuries. It was used to temporarily block the pain they were feeling and could not heal the wounds. The only thing it did was block the pain in the nerves. This jutsu had been put out of practice in recent generations because it is so dangerous. It wouldn't do any good if she didn't at least seal the cuts on her body first. She healed the parts of her body that were cut at least enough to stop the bleeding. She used up a good amount of chakra in order to stop it. She had to end this fight quickly. She had used too much chakra already, so she would have to end this fight quickly. Her Byakugan gave her the best chance possible to get out of this battle alive. I commend you for doing your homework, but there's a lot you don't know about the Byakugan. I have a question. Do you know anything about the Lion Fist? She got into her stance. You should be honored. You'll be one of the few people I've ever fought and have ever used this technique on. A lion-like aura surrounded her arms. They were blue, and it looked like a lion. She saw where Zabuza was. As fast as lightning, Hinata went straight to Zabuza, who blocked the lion fist with his sword. There were cracks. Sheer power. It was not something the blade was able to handle. Water-style water bullet. She felt water which was like a bullet go through her stomach. She coughed up blood, almost collapsing. He laughed. This is the great lioness. What a joke. The almighty lion fist is nothing but baseless boasting from an arrogant princess. You should have stayed in your castle, girl. Hinata with all of her willpower got up and screamed the pain. It didn't matter. You keep making assumptions, Zabuza. No one has ever seen my lion fist and lived to tell the tale. She used the same technique from earlier on her stomach to dull the pain and to stop the bleeding. She went behind him and hit him straight in the back, knocking him at the other side of where they were standing. His body knocked crates over metal bars falling off the bridge. Her opponent was breathing heavily, using his sword for support. What the hell are you? He asked her, as if he were looking at her for the first time. The lioness of Konoha, your grim reaper. She was about to do the killing blow, but then, with barely enough time to spare, she ducked. The person she was about to kill was not the real Zabuza, it was a clone. Sorry, I'm aiming for my target. I have a job to finish. She saw him aiming straight for Tazuna. She had to get there in time. She couldn't let her mission be a failure. Ignoring the pain in her body, she went there with lightning speed. Sakura was terrified. Hinata could see it in her eyes. If Hinata didn't get there, in time Sakura would die. She couldn't let her future die with her. She had hopes and dreams just like everyone in the land of waves. In an act of desperation, Hinata pushed her body to the very limit. She was going to save Sakura. She was going to save the people in the land of waves. She was very close when she was about to stop Zabuza from ending Sakura's life. But Hinata was too late. She was 1 second too slow. Earlier with Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto did the hand signs for the shadow clones, Haku. As Naruto suspected, Haku attacked them. Sasuke waited patiently until the moment when he would leave himself open. It was difficult. Sasuke was faster than anyone he'd ever faced. Every time he attacked them both, Sasuke felt like he was solving a puzzle. Every time he saw an attack, he was able to get closer and closer to solving the mystery. Then he found it, even if it was for a fraction of a second. He jumped from one puddle of water to the other. He had to physically leave at that fraction of a second. He was vulnerable. Sasuke hit Haku even slightly. Yes, he could do it larger just by distracting him with Naruto's clothes to distract him, and Sasuke being able to hit him, they would get out of this alive. Sasuke waited for the right moment to strike and he hit him again. Hawk may be more experienced and skilled than Sasuke and Naruto combined, but Haku was only human. The jutsu that he was using took up a lot of chakra, and he would not be able to keep it up indefinitely. This is what a real battle is like. It's nothing like it is in children's stories. It's a fight to the death. Sasuke didn't want to hear this, he already knew that. This kind of life isn't for the weak-willed. We killed to protect each other's dreams and advance our goals. How much are you willing to sacrifice, Naruto, to protect the woman who is important to you? Sasuke wasn't interested in this philosophical conversation. We have to kill our humanity in order to become effective weapons. That's what it means to be a true shinobi. Both of you are nothing but children. In the real world, this is what being a shinobi is all about, killing. There's nothing noble about it. We're killers, and that's what we'll always be. Sasuke couldn't help but agree with his opponent. It was true, but he didn't care about having this argument. He was looking for a chance to strike. I'm a weapon forged to destroy Zabuza enemies. To be an effective weapon, you have to kill the humanity in you. I'm a living weapon. Can you become one, Naruto, to protect Hinata? Naruto didn't want to hear this. He used the shadow clone jutsu again in Haku. He was everywhere. Naruto had no idea there was a way to beat him. QB advised, you are wasting your chakra unnecessarily, stay focused. No matter how hard he tried, his eyes just couldn't keep up with him, he was too fast. His speed was faster than anything Naruto had ever seen. It was like he was moving faster than light. Naruto wished he hadn't been so rash. They could have had an advantage and he could have attacked Haku from the outside, but instead, he impulsively went inside to aid Sasuke, making things worse. It was too late to think about what ifs. He had to deal with the cards that were being dealt right now. He created more shadow clones in order to try to find a way to defeat Haku. It seemed like the more shadow clones the Naruto created, the faster Haku moved. Sasuke waited for the right time, but that time never came because Haku went for Naruto instead of Sasuke. Despite Sasuke being able to land a few hits, he barely had an opening and he was still going for Naruto. He felt like he was being struck everywhere. He was on his knees, barely able to stand. He didn't know how much longer he could take it. Why was he doing that? Naruto thought. It's because he thinks you're weaker than him. That's why he's targeting you. QB pointed out. Why did he target him then? And it clicked. He was hoping to lure Sasuke out. Naruto wasn't able to get out of the way as time was slowing down. Naruto felt helpless as Sasuke was striking him from every angle imaginable. Naruto couldn't believe his eyes. Sasuke was completely covered in blood, with needles all over his body. He couldn't even stand up. Sasuke! Naruto shouted. He fell to the ground, but not before he caught Sasuke. Why did you do that, Sasuke? Naruto asked, tears falling down his cheeks. It just can't be happening. The first people he's ever made friends with, other than his sensei, and now he's dying. My legs moved on their own. He replied. What about your dream, Sasuke? Why would you throw it all away for me? Naruto asked him, not believing that he would risk his life for him. I told you, idiot, my legs moved on their own. He was lying, he knew that. Can't end like this, Sasuke, you still have your dream. Sasuke coughed. I wish I could avenge them. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. Sasuke closed his eyes. Naruto felt his body go limp. He fought with honor. Like a true ninja. Naruto didn't want to hear Haku's praise of his fallen friend. It didn't matter who it was, he looked at the mist ninja with hatred. It didn't matter that he said it in an apologetic way. He felt so much anger and hate. He wanted to destroy him. What if he did this to Hinata? He felt so powerless and weak. He screamed like an animal. He felt an orange chakra engulfing him, his eyes went from blue to orange, his features resembling those of a fox more than a human. I'll kill you, Naruto said with an inhuman voice. Haku got into a defensive stance and tried in vain to attack Naruto, but it was useless, he easily tossed him like a rag doll, shattering the mirrors. The raw chakra and hatred that he felt for his enemy over the death of his friend, he would not rest until he had completely destroyed everything that Haku stood for. Haku tried to defend himself, but to no avail. Naruto grabbed him by the collar and punched him, knocking him back. He tried to get up to defend himself, but to no avail. Naruto punched him, shattering his mask. It didn't matter, he kept punching him again and again. He did not pay attention to the blood and gore that was on his hands. The face of the ninja who was once named Haku, no one would recognize him. His head was smashed to the point where there was nothing left, not even his brain. Haku no longer existed. When Naruto regained his sanity, he saw what he had done and screamed. The sight of what was in front of him, the smashing of another human beings he had taken a life. No, Naruto didn't think he'd killed Haku, it was murder. He was done fighting, and he still killed him anyway. He screamed, tears falling down his eyes. Was he really just another killer like a shinobi is supposed to be? He didn't want to become a ninja, as a murderer where ninjas are just tools. With Hinata after the death of Haku, she was too late, she was too slow, 1 second too late to save her life. Sakura's head tumbled to the ground. Her body stood still for a few moments before it fell in a heap. Tazuna was uninjured, he was about to do the killing blow to Hinata. 1 down, 3 to go. Zabuza said with a cold indifference. Then they both stopped for a second, they heard a scream. She didn't want to look, and saw the ice mirrors shattered into pieces. What was the source of that? No, she couldn't concentrate on that right now, but her main priority was the enemy who had just ended Sakura's life. The rage she had felt at her failure to protect Sakura in her hubris, she had underestimated Zabuza. She could have ended the fight early if she had gone all out from the very start. A girl with a bright future was extinguished in a blink of an eye. The girl's head looked accusingly at her, blaming her for her death. The pain in her neck didn't even faze her at this moment. She had walked slowly toward her prey, which she saw Zabuza as. He would die, she will avenge Sakura. I'll make you pay for that, you son of a bitch, Hinata said to Zabuza coldly. I'm going to show you why they call me the lioness. She went at him with lightning speed. He barely had a chance to defend himself. He tried to block her lion fist with his sword shattered to pieces. He was pushed back completely shocked on Hinata's strength. He stepped back, got as far away from Hinata as possible and did hand signs. Water style water dragon. 2 water dragons went towards Hinata. She dodged it with ease. She saw him use another jutsu. Water style water tidal wave. A gigantic wave of water spun on them from under the bridge and went towards Hinata. She went towards Tazuna and did a rotation in order to shield him from what would be a lethal blow. When it was over, she moved back to where Zabuza was. He looked like he had fear in his face. He never experienced fear in his life. When he looked into her soul, she didn't look like a human, she looked like a vengeful demon. It was at this moment that he realized he had made the worst mistake of his entire life, the last mistake of his life. Hinata hit him with her lion fist. She punched him, he tried to get up, trying to defend himself, but it was useless. Every blow she had dealt to his body ruptured blood vessels. She didn't even pay attention to his pleas for mercy, she didn't even hear anything. She kept attacking him with her lying fist, she didn't even pay attention as blood covered her vision. She screamed like an animal roaring in the sky like a lion. When she regained her sanity, she looked at Zabuza's body, holes everywhere, she couldn't even recognize his corpse if it weren't for his headband. His head was smashed into pieces, his brains were all over the hands, his ribcage was exposed, his body was barely kept together, his bones were even broken. Her 13-year-old self would have been terrified, but she had long since been desensitized to this violence. Since her first kill, when she first became a ninja, she had. If anyone were to see her at this moment, they would see a cold-hearted ruthless killer, Hinata the lioness, the killer hundreds of shinobi. After she was done making sure Tazuna was safe, she ran and saw the headless body of Haku. His face completely smashed, the remains of his brains were everywhere. If she hadn't been desensitized to this kind of violence, she would have puked. She looked at Sasuke in horror. "Please, not him too," she said, her voice cracking. She ran towards him and checked his pulse. He was alive, so she sighed in relief. She removed the needles from his neck. He would need treatment, but that would come later. Naruto, his hands were shaking. He had never killed before, it looked like, and the fact that he killed Haku was brutal. She wasn't going to judge him. Her first kill wasn't pleasant. She remembered impaling a girl the same age as she was when she defended herself during a mission. She wanted to comfort Naruto, but she felt it wasn't the time. She almost collapsed in pain, the wounds she received from the battle. She wanted to do nothing more than to lie on her back, but she couldn't, not until Sakura's body was recovered and until she knew Tazuna was safe. Then she heard a man speak. "It seems like you took quite a beating, haven't you?" Goto said with arrogance. He had a smug smile. There was about 20 men in total that he had behind him. "It seems like Zabuza and his brat did a lot of damage to you and your team, and one of them is dead. It shouldn't take much to kill you." The famed lioness of Konoha, Naruto and Sasuke weren't able to fight them. It would be a bloody battle. Despite being exhausted and the pain of her injuries with her battle of Zabuza, she believed she could defeat Goto and his men before she could get her stance. She heard voices behind her. "We're not going to let you push us anymore, Goto," said Inari. The boy had no fear in his voice. He had others behind him, they're being led by Inari. "You have come, Inari, to fight and protect what's precious to you," Naruto said, smiling despite the situation. "Yes, I'm done with crying, let's free our land from this bastard." Everyone cheered, they were ready to fight and die. She looked at Naruto, he inspired this boy and gave him courage. All of the people who have been oppressed by Goto are willing to put their lives on the line. She could see it in their eyes, the light that was gone earlier. Naruto could change the world one day. He was the hope the world needed, she couldn't let him die. Then she saw the men behind Goto, they were afraid. "There's too many of them," said a man who was ready to make a tail and run. "It seems like you hired paper tigers," Hinata said mockingly. Goto was angry at her comment and at the cowardice of his men. "Worthless mercenaries, but at least Zabuza and that boy have weakened you. All I have to do is send them to kill all of you and I will have crushed all ounce of resistance." He was denial that he had lost. "You fool, Zabuza ended up dead because he crossed me. Pull back and never return and I'll spare your worthless lives. Refuse and you'll end up dead," Hinata said threateningly. Naruto created shadow clones to reinforce the army. The men looked in fear. Paper tigers, she thought. Goto in his delusions still thinks he won. Hinata ran with lightning speed. He did not know what was coming. A lightning blade came out of her palm as she decapitated him. His body tumbled to the ground. His men ran away in fear. If they haven't heard of the lioness, they know now. She heard the crowd cheering Naruto's name. He inspired them to rise up. The people who ran away from her were ended up meeting gruesome fates by falling into the river. They weren't able to swim. Nobody bothered to save them. They all drowned. Not one of Goto's mercenaries got out of the battle alive. They were all dead by the day's end. Hinata approached Sakura's body. She made sure to touch everything, even though it made her sick. She wanted to bring back all of Sakura's remains. What would she tell her mother and father? This wasn't just her student who died. This was someone's daughter, a girl with a bright future ahead of her. She died just like that. This world is cruel. She was only 13, barely a teenager. She wondered if she would have been better off had she failed Sakura and dropped her from the academy. She looked at Naruto and Sasuke. No, it wouldn't be fair to either of them, but Sakura. Only she was faster. If only she were 1 second faster. She took out the morgue scroll, which was used in missions like this when a student was slain so their bodies could be returned to their families. I'm so sorry, Sakura. Hinata cried. She wanted to scream. It wasn't fair. She deserved better. She did not deserve to die like she did. Zabuza is dead, but that doesn't bring her any comfort. She used the seal to put her body in the scroll. She put it in her pouch, and before she could do anything, she collapsed from the exhaustion and pain that she had experienced throughout the day. Afterwards, after the Battle of the Bridge, Naruto and Sasuke's injuries were tended to. Their injuries were nowhere near as bad as Hinata's. The local doctors did everything they could for her, but the medics of Konoha would have to do the rest. Hinata looked up. It had been 2 days since Sakura lost her life, with the image that is forever ingrained her mind is her severed head tumbling to the ground, cursing her name. She had so much promise in a bright future ahead of her. She could have been a great shinobi, a great kunoichi, but she's dead. Part of her regretted not aborting the mission. Had she done it, she would still be alive now. She's dead, and it's all her fault. Naruto would be disappointed in her if he ever found that out. She's not a good person. She's not a kind person. She's everything that isn't good. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, she said, burying her face in her hands. Failure, said a voice. Weakling, said another. I'm sorry, the tears wouldn't stop falling. It should have been you that died, her father said. I'm sorry, she said the same thing over and over and over again. She felt so pathetic and weak and useless. Why couldn't she have been stronger? Why couldn't she be more like her mother? Why does she have to be so weak? She felt like she was 9 years old again, the weak and powerless girl she had been on the day her mother died. No matter how much time has passed, nothing has really changed. I'm sorry, Kushina-san, I don't know if I'm. She couldn't finish in the emptiness of her room. She cried and didn't stop, screaming loudly. Had it not been for a sound seal, everybody would have heard her screaming loudly and crying loudly. She had failed everyone. I'm sorry, mother, she felt a tear drop from her eyes. She had not cried since the day Itachi betrayed her. You were pathetic and weak, Hinata. Just like every other Hyuga, a weakling like you will never be Hokage. Trusting me was a mistake. I'll spare your pathetic life because you're not worth killing, said Itachi. Sakura, she couldn't stop crying. The tears wouldn't stop dropping. I want to be cool just like you, sensei, said Sakura when she declared what her goal was, which was only a week ago. She didn't feel triumphant at all. Her victory over Zabuza. It felt hollow and meaningless. The real hero is Naruto. He inspired people to liberate themselves from Gato's men. He brought back light to this land. It wasn't Hinata who was willing to abandon it. Part of her wish she had, and that's what made her feel even worse. Naruto deserves a much better person than someone as a sensei, who is actually a good person, not one who is cold, detached, bitter, and unable to cry or laugh. She can do none of those things. Not since that night her heart had been broken into 1,000 pieces. Nor does she trust people or her ability to trust others. Her faith in people is gone, and she doesn't believe it will ever return. Naruto deserves someone better than a wretch like her. Nothing mattered, not her dreams, not her happiness, nothing. The only thing that mattered right now was keeping her promise to Kushina Uzumaki. It's your fault I'm dead, sensei, Sakura said with hatred. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. She sobbed uncontrollably. Sakura's death did the impossible. It made Hinata cry again. Chapter 6 Failure. A raven was sent in order to bring back his teammate Kakashi, along with a medic ninja who he brought with him. The medic ninja healed Hinata's injuries to the best of their abilities. She would need to rest. He carried Hinata home, while the team that was with him escorted Naruto and Sasuke back to Konoha since Hinata was unable to do her duties as a sensei. Team 7 was temporarily unable to do anything, at least until their sensei was healed and a new member was added to their team. Are you sure this is a good idea? Kakashi asked, unconvinced. You have trained her yourself. Kagome Takahashi is an extremely talented young woman who would be a waste to drop permanently from the program. Kakashi understood the Hokage's reasoning, but he still didn't like it. Hinata wasn't ready to take on another student so soon after Sakura's death. Have her parents been informed? The Hokage asked, dreading his response. Yes, Sakura's mother did not take it well. She almost attacked me, but her husband demanded, "Where is Hinata?" It was not a pleasant sight. It's never easy for Kakashi to inform parents that their children had died on a mission. It was one of the most difficult parts of being a ninja. "How is Naruto and Sasuke faring?" he asked Kakashi. "Naruto has been distant, though I think he's going through his own turmoil. He killed for the first time and he doesn't know how to come to terms with it." This was something Kakashi knew immediately when he saw Naruto's face. He barely spoke. "What are we doing, sending children out? Damn it, Kakashi. What are we? Are we machines?" Despite what Hashirama's best intentions were, children are still dying and being sent out to die, and for what? "I'm getting too old for this." Kakashi disliked where this conversation was headed. "Hokage-sama, I know things are difficult, but surely you don't mean to retire." Concerned about all the years he had spent looking up to someone other than his sensei, Minato, everyone in his generation had grown up with him as the Hokage. It was inconceivable that anyone else could take his place. "I'm old, Kakashi. Someone else should have succeeded me by now. In fact, I wasn't succeeded only so that I could return later." He knew what he was getting into. If only, never mind, I shouldn't wish for things to be different because it's pointless. It doesn't change the present. Kakashi asked how soon Kagome could transfer. "As soon as Hinata is able to resume her duties," the Hokage answered. "We should give her space, as what happened was traumatic." A traumatic understatement, Kakashi thought. He remembers it like it was only yesterday. What happened to Rin? Kakashi tenses when he thinks about that memory, a failed promise he couldn't keep to his late friend Obito. He knows what it's like to feel pain like you could have done. She will likely have nightmares for months or years to come from such a failure. It never completely goes away, it stays with you. That's why most don't choose to be promoted to Jonin. I know what you're thinking, Kakashi. That it's too soon unless Team 7 has a new member. The team will have to be disbanded, and I won't let that happen. As soon as she recovers, Kagome Takahashi will join Team 7. Kakashi wanted to argue against it, he gave in. There was no point, the Hokage had already made up his mind and there was no changing it. "I'm not sure if it's a good idea." The old man put down his pipe. No matter what argument Kakashi presents, the Hokage has already made up his mind, and nothing can be done. "I will inform the girl of her transfer in a few days." Kakashi bowed low and left the Hokage's office. Naruto couldn't stop thinking about it, how he had killed Haku. What made it worse was that he had stopped fighting, the battle was over, and Sasuke wasn't dead but alive. It was not self-defense, it was murder. Naruto wanted to scream, this can't be what being a ninja is about. What Haku said is correct, shinobi are killers. They're tools, that's what they've always been. This is the reality. Kyuubi said bluntly. He didn't want to hear it, he couldn't accept it. There was no other way he could be both a shinobi and still be human. This is bullshit. I didn't become a shinobi to be a killer, to be a murderer. This is not what I wanted to do. He was so frustrated and so angry. Not only was he unable to do anything to protect his friends, but Sakura, his classmate and teammate, was dead. It wasn't real, it couldn't be real, but it was. He saw her remains, her severed head. He couldn't get the image out of his mind. The facial expression she had at the time of death was fear. He couldn't protect his classmate, he couldn't protect Hinata. Grow up. This is what it means to be a shinobi. Do you want to be acknowledged as a man by your woman, or do you forever want to stay a boy? Kyuubi wasn't pulling any punches. It's not fair the way Sakura died, it was fucked up. We may not have known each other that well and she may have been kind of a bitch to me, but still she didn't deserve to die like that. Naruto couldn't help but cry. It bothered him that he couldn't protect anyone, and the fact that he murdered someone in cold blood. Nobody can convince him it wasn't cold-blooded murder. Death is always a possibility in this line of work. You should have known that when you decided to become a shinobi. It's not fun and games. Face reality, Naruto. There's always a chance you could lose friends in this line of work. Even your precious Hinata is not immune. This isn't a story that you read in one of your books. This is real. Humans have been fighting to the death long before shinobi existed, and they'll do it long after shinobi become things of legend. You are not a child anymore. It's time you face that fact and stop looking at the world in a childish way. He was brutal in his honesty. Naruto couldn't argue against it because he was right, and he couldn't hated him for it, but he couldn't help but be angry at him at this moment. You could hate me for telling you how it is, but it's the truth. Was it your weakness that caused Sakura's death? It doesn't matter. There was nothing you could have done, you couldn't have known what would happen her death is not your responsibility, and wishing for things to be different is pointless. Focus on the present. Kyuubi may have been right, but it didn't Naruto feel any better. It was so easy to be told to do that. When he was on the mission, he froze at the beginning. He felt like such a coward, he felt so pathetic. Sasuke saved him, and when Hinata looked at him like he was a helpless little boy and not a ninja. I'm tired of being weak, I'm tired of being helpless. I want to be able to protect those I care about so I will never be powerless again. I don't want to ever freeze again. Then Naruto thought about Haku, the boy he had killed. You didn't know Sasuke wasn't dead, you thought you were avenging him. You aren't at fault, you were in a battle to the death. Anyone could have made that mistake. Naruto didn't want to hear it, he didn't have to go that far. When he punched him and shattered the mirror, it was over. He had won the fight. He still attacked him until there was nothing left of his face. His smashed brains is something he cannot get out of his mind. His face was covered in it no matter how many times he tried to wash it from his face when he was in the shower, but it still wouldn't go away, he could still feel the blood of Haku on his face. He had to do something, anything to get his mind off of it. He got dressed in his usual clothes and headed to the training grounds to train so that he could take his mind off of what had happened. Sasuke was pissed off, he had completely and utterly failed. Yes, he survived, but he was helpless again, even with his Sharingan, it was not enough, he needed to train more, he needed to get stronger faster. The very fact that he was so far behind his brother made him sick. The very fact that he's able to walk free made him sick. No matter how many times he gets a bullseye with his eyes closed, a skill that he has mastered for years, he still isn't good enough. His fireball jutsu, which he has also mastered, is still not good enough. He is frustrated even though he has received training from Hinata Hyuga. It seems that what he has learned so far is not enough. He is 13 and feels like he is no closer to his goal than he was 5 years ago. Although he does not have a personal connection to Sakura on a personal level, this still infuriates him. She showed signs of moving past her infatuation with him. He couldn't help but wonder what might have been. No longer was she focused on impressing him, but rather on improving her own skills. What good was that now? She was dead, and her hopes and dreams died with her. One of the things that bothered him the most was why he used his own body as a shield. His goal was to kill Itachi, but he was willing to put that at risk to save Naruto. Why? The question bothered Sasuke the more he thought about it. Was he getting soft? Was he becoming fond of Naruto? Was Naruto his friend? Up until recently, he couldn't stand him. He started seeing Naruto as someone he could respect. Could that be the reason? No, he couldn't think about that right now. He had his own goals to focus on, revenge by any means necessary. If he couldn't get stronger than his family and clan, they could never rest. Itachi had to die. What mattered now was training and taking any sort of training from anyone who could get him closer to his goal. He would do it. Hinata. He was starting to respect her. Her skills and the way she carried herself made Sasuke feel foolish for judging her harshly. But could he really apologize to her? It felt embarrassing. There was no need. He could show her respect in other ways. He can do it through his actions even if he still has misgivings because of Shiza Hyuga. He continued with his routine after he was done. He went to Naruto was hopefully he can get some training done with him to keep his mind off the mission. Hinata had been staring at the ceiling ever since she had returned from the mission. She hadn't been able to sleep well, as it was riddled with nightmares. She lay on her bed, it being late at night, and she couldn't sleep because she couldn't get over the failure. She couldn't save Sakura's life, Sakura had died because of her. It was all her fault. When Gato was killed by her hand, the people in the Land of Waves celebrated that their oppressor, who had oppressed them for all those years, was finally gone. A raven was sent because she was unable to move due to her injuries. She almost welcomed the pain, thinking it was what she deserved. She felt like a hypocrite. How could she set a good example for her students if she had done the same thing? Was she really qualified to be a Jonin? It should have been you who died, her father said all those years ago. Those words still hurt her, despite how many years have passed. How deep those memories are buried in her soul. That was one memory she couldn't suppress. A week passed since they returned home, but Hinata was healed, so she could resume her duties as a ninja. She didn't know if she even deserved to be Naruto or Sasuke's teacher. She had failed them. She went to Sakura's funeral. She saw her mother and her father, along with Sakura's sister, who was still at the academy. As her teacher, she had to pay her respects. It was only right, but her presence wasn't welcomed. However, Sakura's mother looked at her and gave her a look of anger. "How dare you come here? It's bad enough that I had to bury my own child, but to see you, who is responsible, come here, you have some nerve." Hinata couldn't say anything in her defense. She was right. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to pay my respects. I don't care you were responsible for my daughter's death, it's all your fault. Your arrogance and hubris are the whole reason she is dead." Her voice cracked, and she couldn't speak clearly because of the grief. "I hate you. You damn Hyuga, it should have been you who died instead of her, you worthless wretch." Hinata froze. It was almost the same words her father had said. She couldn't move. "I'm sorry." She fell to her knees, remembering more things she didn't want to remember from the day her mother died. "Weakling," a voice said. "Coward, a disgrace to the Hyuga clan," said another. She heard more voices, they were getting louder now. "Please stop," Hinata whispered. "It's your fault I'm dead, sensei," said Sakura. "It should have been you that died, you worthless wretch," said her father. The flashes she didn't want it experience those memories again. "Run, Hinata, run," her mother told her. There were ninjas from Kumogakure. The 9-year-old girl was scared. She couldn't move. She was terrified. She was holding her 3-year-old sister Hanabi there, looking to kidnap them both. She was scared. She couldn't move. Her mother was begging her to run, but knees wouldn't move. It was as if they were frozen. A ninja was about to grab her, but he was killed by Hinata's mother, who fought like a lion protecting her cubs. "Run, Hinata, take Hanabi," and she didn't get a chance to finish. A lightning blade went through her heart. Hinata saw blood drip from her mother's mouth, and at that instant she fell face down dead. Hinata screamed, "Mother! Wake up! Wake up!" But it was no use. No matter how hard she tried, her mother wouldn't wake up. Her lifeless body, her eyes which no longer had light in them, was staring at her, telling her she was at fault. Right as her kidnappers were about to grab her, their bodies were broken. Her father and her uncle came to save her, but her father looked at her and said those awful words, "It should have been you that died. You worthless wretch. If you weren't so useless and weak, my wife would still be alive. Leave me." Those words that he said hurt more than anything she ever received. She couldn't control the tears falling, the memories of that awful day, her father's words. Sakura's mother looked at her with even more anger and hatred. She picked her up by the collar. "Do you think going on your knees and begging for forgiveness and crying is going to bring my daughter back? She's dead. You are at fault. You might as well have killed her yourself, you worthless wretch. You should have never been promoted to Jonin. It was a mistake." She didn't want to hear anymore. She didn't want to experience that day again or the days that followed. "That's enough, mother. You made your point," a soft voice said. "It's a girl who looks like she's around 10. The girl looked at Hinata with the same hatred her mother had. "Leave," the girl said coldly. Hinata forced herself to get up and ran as fast as her legs could carry her. She went to her spot that she'd always gone to when she had no one to go to. She went there for the first time at her mother's funeral. No one was around. She curled herself into a ball and cried over her failure in the land of waves and the memory of the awful day that she was forced to relive. 1 week later, Kakashi was keeping an eye on Hinata. She hadn't left her apartment once since Sakura's funeral. He was getting worried about her, and his colleagues Asuma and Kurenai were also worried, considering they took Hinata in when she had nowhere to go after she left the Hyuga compound. "It can't go on like this, Kakashi. Her students need her," Asuma said to his friend, because she didn't want to get involved in Naruto and Sasuke's situation. They were getting anxious. Their teacher wasn't there for them at that time. Kakashi hated seeing his former student, curled up in a ball, crying her eyes out. This was the first time she had cried since the horrible night 5 years ago. "I'll talk to her." Kurenai was about to go to her apartment, but Kakashi stopped her. "It's going to require tough love for her to get out of this. You're too soft for what's needed to make Hinata move forward." His two colleagues wondered what he was getting at. "Kurenai, no offense, but you're too kind. Hinata needs someone to tell her what she needs to hear, not what she wants to hear. I will not let my former student drown herself in despair." I will only give up my chance of being a sensei to Naruto and Sasuke because I have full faith in Hinata's abilities. Kakashi explained in a neutral expression. I think the kind approach would be a better way to approach this. Kurenai voiced her opposition to Kakashi's method of trying to get her out of her self-imposed exile. If it were a different situation, I would agree, but not in this case. Hinata's situation is different, she has been betrayed, and she has lost her faith in people. The only person who can help her regain that trust is Naruto Uzumaki. For that to happen, someone outside of her team needs to set her straight. That person has to be me. You two are too close to her, you're like family. It's best if you don't get involved. Kakashi said in a tone that left no room for a counter-argument against what he was saying. Kakashi, I don't know if I like what you're suggesting, she's been through a lot. Kurenai disagreed. So have I, and so have you, and so has Asuma. We've seen things worse than what she's seen, we've fought in a war and seen and done horrible things to other human beings. Hinata, what she's seen doesn't compare. Not to mention, I understand her pain in ways you don't. I know what it's like to be burdened with failure. Kakashi said, remembering his promise to Obito to protect Rin. He failed in his promise, and that will haunt him for the rest of his life. He had failed to protect those important to him, his sensei and other friends he barely remembers their faces, student it being so long. We're sorry, Kakashi. Asuma wasn't allowed to finish. It's fine. You two have your own teams to worry about. Let me deal with Hinata. His colleagues took one last look at Hinata's apartment and reluctantly left, leaving Kakashi alone at his spot where he was. Going to Hinata's apartment was something he didn't want to do, but it was necessary. He wasn't going to let his student drown in self-pity or despair, not if he had nothing to say about it. Hinata has been following the same routine for the past week. She barely ate or sleeps. She doesn't even bathe. Her hair is a mess. She should have returned to duty by now, but is she really worth it? She has failed, she can't protect anyone. She was in her room, curled up in a ball, and in the same position she had been in the past few days. She didn't notice when someone entered her room. Kakashi appeared in front of her, and he didn't look too happy. How long are you going to stay there and feel sorry for yourself? He asked her in a non-compassionate tone. She looked up and saw the man who had trained her, her mentor. She looked down, ashamed. I'm not here to feel sorry for myself. Hinata replied. Oh, really? Then what are you doing right now? Curled up in a ball like a crybaby, crying about your failure. Kakashi said coldly. Hinata said coldly, shut up. Why should I? I'm only saying what is true, maybe what they say about the Hyuga is true. The more I see you, the more I'm convinced that you're just like them. Shut up. Hinata activated her Byakugan, and she pushed Kakashi against the wall. Or what are you going to do, spoil little princess? Kakashi taunted. She was so angry that she wanted to do nothing but be Kakashi to the inch of his life right now. Anything to get him to shut up. Meet me at the training grounds in 10 minutes. Don't be late, Kakashi ordered, disappearing in a puff of smoke. Yes, she'll make him shut up. She met him at the training ground, where her team trains. Kakashi was in his gear. Hinata didn't even bother getting dressed, she was going to make him shut up. No words were needed, she charged right at him. He was casually blocking her blows while he read a book. What has happened to you, Hinata? Kakashi asked her. You're better than this, but the very fact that I could easily defeat you by not even looking at you is proof that you are not yourself. Kakashi pointed out much of her rage. I don't want to hear your damn lectures, she said, her voice full of anger. Does the princess think she's above being scolded for being a fool? Kakashi challenged. She got into her stance for the 1/8 trigram 64 palms that would make him shut up. She went straight for the kill, no one could win if they had their chakra points cut off. She hit every single one of Kakashi's chakra points, and when she was done, she knocked him back against the tree. Then she noticed a log. Amateur mistake, Kakashi taunted, then backhanded Hinata, knocking her to the ground. She got up, wiping the dirt from her face. Stop toying with me, she screamed as she charged at him with lightning speed. This time, she used Lion Fist. Kakashi dodged casually, angering her even more. He was treating her like a child. Why should I take you seriously? A spoiled child doesn't deserve to be treated as anything but a child. Kakashi said with a condescending smile. She attacked him wildly, not caring about strategy or tactics, not caring but anything else, making him shut up. He continued to dodge. Despite her best efforts, she couldn't land one blow on him. How pathetic was what happened to the great lioness of Konoha. What I see before me is nothing more than a spoiled child having a tantrum. More insults, more condescension. Kakashi was backed into a corner. He didn't want to do it, but finally landed a blow. When she hit him, it was another log. Where are you? Damn you. Show yourself, you coward. She screamed at him, leaving as if he were entertained by her anger and rage. I am everywhere and nowhere, my dear little princess. Maybe you should go back to your castle. That's it. She looked around with her Byakugan, looking for the real Kakashi. There were multiple shadow clones, so she felt a backhand to her face and she was knocked to the ground. To try to get back up, but was kicked to the side by another clone. She tried to get up again, but was only kicked by another clone to her right side and then another to her left. Is this what I should expect from you? To think that I even gave you your promotion. You're giving up on your first real mission because of one failure. You're a sad and pathetic excuse for a ninja. You're on the verge of giving up, like a spoiled child. I thought you had changed, but apparently I was wrong. Kakashi said, disgusted with her. Perhaps Kushina-san's faith in you was misplaced. Perhaps Naruto also misjudged you. If he saw what you're doing now, he would be beyond sickened by you. You're kind like Hinata-sensei, said Naruto. You know what? Maybe I should just kill Naruto after all. You're too weak to protect him. She screamed like a roaring lion, did a rotation that knocked the other shadow clones back, then she looked at the real Kakashi. She with lightning speed tackled him against the tree, slamming him hard against the tree trunk. She hit him with her lion fist over and over again. She didn't pay attention, whether it was a shadow clone or the real thing. He didn't matter, she screamed in anguish over her failure in the land of waves. Everything she did, she didn't pay attention to, her bleeding hands as she continued to attack the object in front of her. When she fell over, she looked at her hands, which were covered in her own blood. Kakashi put his hand on her shoulder. She looked and saw the real Kakashi, and she collapsed exhausted. Now that you have let out your built-in emotions, you will be more receptive to reason. I'm sorry I said what I said to you, Hinata. I wanted you to get all those emotions out rather than let them eat at you like they have in the past 2 weeks. I am disappointed, though, that you are in the state that you're in. I thought you would be stronger. She looked down, ashamed. I failed. Sakura's death was all my fault, she said in a barely audible whisper. Kakashi had a neutral expression. Am I a good person, Kakashi-sensei? Hinata asked him. Part of me wishes I would have abandoned the mission if I had done that. Sakura would still be alive, Naruto. He thinks I'm a good person, but anything but good. I'm unable to trust others. I can't laugh or smile. I'm just a bitter woman. I'm not a good person. What does he see in me? Hinata asked him, expecting him to have the answers. I don't know, only Naruto knows that. Hinata. There was nothing you could have done. Zabuza was a formidable opponent. He knew he couldn't defeat you, so he resorted to other methods. We've all experienced failure, Hinata, all of us, without exception. All of us have lost students too, you're not unique in this. She knew what Kakashi had said was true, but it didn't make her feel any better. Sakura shouldn't have died for my mistake, Hinata insisted. In battle, anything can happen. I've heard the report of what happened. Dwelling on what ifs, what could have been, isn't healthy. Hinata, you're not honoring Sakura by drowning yourself in self-pity. Naruto and Sasuke need you, your team needs you. Hinata, we're worried about you. I know you're reluctant to open yourself up again or to trust in others, but there are people who care. Naruto cares. Kakashi meant it, she knew it, but she couldn't bring herself to trust people or let them in. Betrayal was something she didn't want to ever experience again. I'll leave it up to you, Hinata, whatever you do with my advice. I know you'll make the right decision, you always do, that's why I believe in you and your dream. Kakashi said with a sad smile, as she could see from his mask that he had disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving her alone. Naruto needs her, she may be a failure, but the least she can do is fulfill her promise she had made all those years ago to look after Kushina's son. Yes, drowning herself in self-pity would do nothing. She forced herself to get up and head to where Naruto was. Naruto needed a place to think. He decided to go to the training grounds of Team 7. It had been almost 2 weeks since Naruto and his team returned from the Land of Waves mission. Before he got to the training grounds, he heard footsteps behind them. He looked and saw it was Hinata. He had not seen her since the mission. He had no idea what to say. "I'm sorry, Naruto," Hinata apologized. He had no idea how to respond. How could he? He failed his sensei. If only he had gotten to the bridge on time. If only he wasn't so rash and arrogant. "I'm the one who should apologize, sensei. It was my arrogance and rashness that costed Sakura her life. If I hadn't been late." Hinata wrapped her arms around him, hugged around him and spoke softly to his ear. "It's not your fault, Naruto. There's nothing you could have done. Don't blame yourself. Don't let this eat you up," she said to him softly, her soft and soothing voice. He could feel the pain in her voice. He would give anything to be able to comfort her. "I wasn't strong enough to protect Sasuke or Sakura or you." Naruto said that last part quietly. He wanted to be able to protect her. He was tired of being a boy. He wanted to be a man, someone worthy of respect. He wanted Hinata to acknowledge him as a man. "You want to be a man, to be worthy of your future mate, you will have to work hard. As it stands now, you are not worthy of her, you are weak, and she knows it. If you cannot protect her then you don't deserve her, as simple as that." QB harshly what he said, but it was true. "Can you forgive this fool, for neglecting you for this long?" Naruto looked at her in the eye. After she pulled away, she looked like she was crying for days. He would give anything to wipe the tears from her face. He would give anything to see her smile. "There's nothing to forgive, Hinata-sensei," Naruto said kindly. "You're so kind, Naruto, it's more than I deserve," Hinata said, cracking. What happened in the Land of Waves affected everyone dealt with it differently. Sasuke dealt with it by training even harder, and Naruto did it by lashing out. All of them were affected by Sakura's death. How would Team 7 move forward with one of its members dead? No doubt there would be a replacement in the near future. He dreaded that day. No one could replace Sakura, but when Naruto thinks about her, it was just a crush that he once had, a shallow one of that. Then he looks at Hinata. He doesn't know how he feels about her. It was something different when he thinks about Hinata. The idea of anything happening to her, he couldn't think about it. He didn't want to. What were his feelings? He did not know. He put aside for now. She was hurting more than anyone. He couldn't make this about himself and his feelings. "I'll do what I can to support you, sensei. I know you're in pain right now, but you have my support. We're friends, right?" Naruto asked her. The woman looked at him. He couldn't tell what she was thinking exactly. She turned away, not knowing why she spoke softly. "Of course we are, Naruto," Hinata said reassuringly. "You really mean that, sensei?" Naruto asked her, hoping what she said was true. "Yes, if you're okay with it." The way she said it, there was a loneliness and longing for someone to be her friend, to confide in. Be careful with someone like this. She has trust issues. The fact that she is willing to accept your friendship is progress. Don't take advantage of her trust. Someone like this doesn't trust easily. If you truly want to be worthy of your woman, don't take advantage of her trust. The fox spirit advised. "I would never do that," Naruto replied angrily. "I'm just giving you some advice, but I've seen plenty of scummy humans take advantage of women like this Hinata. She's one of the few humans I like, and I wouldn't like it if you took advantage of someone like that. Whatever you heed my advice or not is up to you." He would take his advice to heart because he would do it regardless if he gave him that advice. Before he could say anything, Sasuke arrived. "So you finally came out, sensei, so what are we going to do now?" Sasuke asked her. Naruto had the same question. They were one person short. How would they go on missions now? "For now, we will train and get stronger together. I'm sorry to both of you for neglecting you as a sensei," Hinata said to both Naruto and Sasuke. "Whatever happened to Sakura, I don't blame you," Naruto said to Hinata. "It's not your fault, sensei," Sasuke added. "Tomorrow, we will meet at the same time and train to become stronger. So that what happened in the Land of Waves never happens again. I won't let either of you die. I swear on this with my life," Hinata said to both of them. This was a serious vow. She understood what it meant. Nobody makes this sound likely, and that's what scared Naruto. He felt weak and pathetic. Team 7 to Naruto wasn't just a cell to him, it was the closest thing he had to family. He would do everything in his power to protect them. He failed. Yes, he did. Regardless of what Hinata said, he could not have done anything. He couldn't because he was weak. He needed to get stronger so he would never again be a burden on anyone and never again lose the people that he cares about. He would train to protect Hinata, the woman who has become the most important person in his life. He would never again be a burden, he would never again freeze. But there was one thing that bothered him, he didn't know if he could talk to her about it. 2 weeks later. It had been a month since the mission. She had noticed something about Naruto. Something was eating at him. She tried to keep her distance in order to give him space because of what happened. She couldn't let this go. His knuckles were bleeding. Naruto was training so intensely that he didn't notice Hinata was there. Something was bothering him. You're not going to get stronger if you train like that, Hinata scolded him. Naruto turned around and then looked away in shame. He couldn't bear to face her in the past month. He hadn't made eye contact with her. Something was wrong, she had to find out why. What's eating at you, Naruto? Hinata asked him. She waited for Naruto to give his response. He was looking to choose his words carefully from the look in his eyes. He didn't know how to tell her what he's feeling. Are we really killers, Hinata-sensei? She did not expect to be asked this question. She never thought about it before. Yes, that's what we are. That's what we always have been. We are our village's first and last line of defense, that's what we are. She didn't mean to sound as cold as she was sounding, but that's how the world worked. There was nothing honorable or glorious about being a shinobi, it was an occupation, nothing more. Even you're a killer? Naruto asked, not wanting to believe it. She got on her knees and put her hand on his shoulder. Yes, even me, even the Hokage. She was destroying the last remnants of Naruto's childish beliefs, but it had to happen if he was going to survive in this harsh world. I refuse to believe that you're so kind, Hinata-sensei. I have a difficult time believing that you are a killer. A killer is someone who kills without remorse. Killing in self-defense is not being a killer. I don't know how they're the same thing. Rationalizing what is objective reality, Hinata wanted to cry. She wished she could hold on to these beliefs, but she had grown up long ago. Naruto, what happened in your fight with Haku was not your fault. Hinata said sharply, cutting through his turmoil. What I did wasn't self-defense, it was murder. Naruto's hands were shaking, she could feel it. She placed her hands on his and she made him look at her in the eye. Naruto, look at me. You have killed for the first time. It's a part of you that changes forever. You don't know what would have happened if you didn't kill Haku. Maybe he would have stopped, or maybe he wouldn't. You can't think of what ifs and take reality as it happened. He's dead. His blood is on your hands. She made Naruto touch her hands and demonstrated her point further by making him look at her hands. When I was 12, I killed a girl. I impaled her. I was in the exact same position as you were then. Was it murder what I did? Things happened so quickly, I didn't think about it, I just did it. I did what was expected of me. She took a deep breath due to how unpleasant the memory of that first kill was. Unfortunately, he was associated with it. Flashback 7 years ago, Hinata first kill. Hinata was on a cliffside on the border between the land of fire and the land of lightning. She was battling enemies stronger than anything she had faced before at the academy. None of the enemies she had fought or encountered before were missing nin. While this current opponent is around Chunin rank in terms of skill, she had recently graduated from the academy and was not prepared for a life or death situation like this. The girl had long white hair, all of her skin was olive, and her eyes were red from the scratches on her headband. She was from Kumogakure, and the sight of anyone from that part of the 5 nations disgusted her. The only good cloud ninja is a dead cloud ninja, Hinata said with hatred. She came off as brave on the inside. She was terrified of taking another life, even if it was an enemy from a nation that is a borderline enemy, despite the official records saying the opposite. I can't control where I was born, Konoha scum, the girl replied. The girl wasted no time, she went straight to Hinata. If I bring your eyes as a present to a black market salesman, I can make a fortune. The white-haired girl said, the idea of someone using the Byakugan is something to be sold as disgusting to Hinata. She struck her opponent at the chest, knocking her back. Completely caught off guard, the girl went into her own fighting stance, not wanting to be killed by a newbie. Fresh meat from the Hyuga clan is getting cocky, you should have stayed in your castle, princess. Girl said mockingly. Hinata wasn't going to take the bait. Do not underestimate her, said a raven-haired man. I won't, replied Hinata to her squad. I'll cover you, Hinata, said Itachi, who was right by her side. Take care of it yourself, Itachi-kun, he didn't reply. He looked at her concerned. I can do it, she insisted. Itachi relented and came to Shisui aid with stronger opponents than the one Hinata was facing. There was silence between them. Neither did they make a move. This was her first test, and if she could defeat this foe, she would be closer to her goal. The girl made her first move. She tried to strike it with Hinata's chakra points, using chakra needles that are used to disrupt the flow of someone's chakra. It being a deadly weapon in capable hands, she blocked the girl's blows with her gentle fist. Unfortunately, you're against a Hyuga. The Byakugan has no blind spots, she said with a voice of arrogance, confident enough to back it up. She tried to attack Hinata's right thigh, but Hinata blocked. She tried to attack Hinata's left hand, but Hinata had energy-like blades that caused the girl to back off, not knowing what kind of jutsu Hinata was about to unleash. A chakra claw appeared on both hands. It was a jitsu that she had developed on her own. She wanted to test it out in combat. She combined aspects of the gentle fist with this ninjutsu. Her hands went in a claw position and she shouted. Cruel fist 1.8 trigrams 24 palms. She slashed at the girl like a tiger. Every hit that landed was like a cut with a blade. The girl was shocked, and when she knocked, it was done. When she slashed in a downward motion, the girl was shocked on how fast she was. She wasted no more words. She did another technique in this style that she had created. Cruel fist 1.8 trigrams. Palm blade. She went straight at the girl, a blade as long as a spear going straight through the girl's chest, slamming her against the tree. The girl looked at her in shock as the life left her. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She had just killed someone for the first time. When the moment passed, when the adrenaline sighted, she couldn't believe it. She had just done a jitsu that she had created, worked hard to make perfect. She had just killed another human being. Her hands were shaking, they were completely covered in the girl's blood. The girl was no older than she was, 1 or 2 years at most, and she killed her. Snap out of it, Shisui told Hinata. She looked at her friend. She is way too kind for this Shisui, Itachi said coming to her defense. We are shinobi, Itachi. There's a time and place for kindness and compassion. This is not one of them. That girl had viable information that could have endangered people's lives back in Konoha. He looked at her. Despite his harsh words, he was understanding. Hinata, don't feel guilty about what she did. It was self-defense, and she would have killed you. Don't dwell on it. You couldn't have spared her life, there was no other way. She looked at the girl's body, not believing that she had just killed someone. With a new technique that her clan would never think of, she looked at the girl's body. She never wanted to use the cruel fist again, which is a dangerous technique for the user and those around them. Whatever you're thinking, Hinata, you are correct, the jutsu is dangerous. Use it only when necessary, or it could kill you and those you care about, advised Itachi. She had difficulty breathing. This was not what she wanted. She didn't want to be a killer. Hinata, I know you don't want to hear this, but you need to hear this. Sooner or later, someone else will tell you it's better that I'll tell you myself. We're shinobi, and that's what we'll always be. You're not a child anymore. Your childhood ended the moment you got that headband around your neck. It's time to act like an adult, said her childhood friend Shisui. We should go, we don't want to linger here. She looked one last time at the dead girl and then looked at her friends from the Uchiha clan. They were right, as much as she hated to admit it. She had almost forgotten about that memory about her first kill and how it was associated with Itachi and Shisui. She shoved that memory down to the deepest depths of her mind. She would not think of him, regardless of the context of the memories. Naruto needed her guidance, and she would not get any guidance by pulling from the past, especially from that certain man. This would kill the last aspect of his childhood innocence, the way he looks at the world. She had this romanticized view of what shinobi are, only to have it shattered on her first mission, where she fought to the death against a girl the same age as she was. Someday I tend to change this village. I want to redefine what it means to be a shinobi, her 12-year-old self said such childish dribble. She abandoned that way of thinking when she killed for the first time. She had almost forgotten one of the other reasons she wanted to be Hokage Naruto. She wanted him to stay true to himself, she didn't want him to be like her, everyone else. Thank you, Naruto. You reminded me why my dream is as important to me as it is. Thank you. This wasn't easy for either of them. She knew this, she would like to believe that Naruto can change things, that they can change things. Before they could engage in any further conversation, someone approached them. And Abushi wondered what they wanted. Hokage-sama has summoned you, she wondered what this was about, she sighed. Remember what I said, Naruto, she went with her escort and headed to his office. After Hinata left, Naruto thought heavily about what they discussed. The harsh reality that Kyuubi had told him didn't sit well with him. He hated what both of them said, but did he really have to define himself based on what a bunch of old fossils say? She told you the exact same thing I told you, not as harshly, but it's the truth. What are you going to do now? He asked him. Naruto didn't know what to do. The only thing he knew for sure was that he had to get a lot stronger. He felt weak and useless as long as he stayed a boy, he couldn't protect his friends or her. The one thing he cared about the most right now was being stronger so he could be equal to Hinata and worthy of her. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more fanfics like this. Have a nice day.